we are now often talking about the dark ages, close to the Middle Ages and that kind of stuff. I think we are now in the past 500 to 1,000 years in the darkest time of human history. It's so depraved, things that are going on. And I want to ask you right now, Kevork, how are you doing? That's number one. And number two, can you update us a little bit about what is going on with your country, Syria?
Thank you very much for having me. It is, for me, it's beyond heartbreaking what's happening in the region. I just want to give your respected audience a context. Yes, it is true. 110 years ago, my family came to Syria as a refugee. But when I opened my eyes, I was born in Syria and I studied in Syria and I worked in Syria. I socialized with the Syrians. I drank from the Syrian water. I ate the Syrian food. I spoke their language like a mother tongue. And when I was a child, my father always educated me to love this country because the people of this country have saved my grandparents from the Armenian genocide. And he always told me that we have to respect the military. Like when you see a checkpoint of a military, you give them, let's say, your salute. My father served in the military during the Muslim Brotherhood uprising in the 80s. So additionally, he always told me like we have a debt to the Syrian people, which is they saved us from these massacres. So I am loyal to the people in Syria. And when I see what's happening to the people, I feel like I have a responsibility to shed light on the tragedy. I don't have anything to gain personally from this. In the contrary, I lose when I speak about these cases. So it's not like something I'm generating money or fame. In the contrary, it is something that causes smear campaigns, something that makes you lose money, opportunities, scholarships. But when I see that a considerable number of the people in Syria, they have been manipulated to believe that this is for their own good, right? You start to feel like you're talking into a void. Now, the political events and the security events in the region, in my opinion, are very strong, and the people's ability to change the realities are very tiny. And then you have someone, a talking head like myself, just trying to, show the people that there are two sides in every story so that they can make up their mind. But then when the political realities hit and changes happen and you see that the people are celebrating, for me, this is something like a drunk person who is celebrating now and then the second day he is in hangover. And this is what I believed when the regime change happened. Not because I'm foreseeing the future, but in political science, you know better than myself. You have historical events and you see patterns and you see outcomes of similar actions. Therefore, when Syria is not much different of Iraq, yes, there are differences between Syria and Iraq, but socially, Iraq was also divided, let's say, ethnic, Kurds, Arabs, Shia, Sunni, etc. And you see what comes next when the central government collapses and the military is gone. It's a complete chaos. So you will need a few years for new realities to form. And now, when I see the situation in Syria, regime change happened. Okay. The alternative is the founder of the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria. The Syrian military capabilities are completely decimated and destroyed. Turkey is occupying from the north, Israel is occupying from the south, Americans are in the east, the Russians are in the west, and the Syrians are lost in these equations, in this conflict of interests over the country. But what disappoints me is the lack of learning from the very, very recent experiences. Like when I see what happened in Iraq and Libya and the division of Sudan, civil war in Lebanon, and you try to, I don't like to say educate because it comes from a patronizing position, like I know better, but this is like it's my education and it's my job. Like I'm privileged to be able to build an online business from these conflicts, which means I spend most of my day reading articles, reading opinions of different people and making up my mind. But most people are busy with their work or they are suffering to secure a bread. That's why I'm trying to reach these people. But nowadays, the situation is so hopeless that I believe that I can just sit and watch what's going to happen next. Meanwhile, the US, Israel, Russia. Russia is this in the same bed now with with Israel in Syria. Iran is completely out, Hezbollah is completely out, and some of the European countries are trying to formulate. But this is only going to lead into two of the options. One is a federal system, because the Kurds are not going to accept anything less, and they have a big military power constructed and built by the US to counterbalance these Islamists or the Kfiris. And the Druze are not going to accept less than a federal system. They are armed and supported by Israel in Sweden. And now the Alawites and the Christians, after the massacres, they have come to the conclusion, let's say, that they cannot live with these, they say, monsters. So if the Balkanization is a physical aspect, I think it has to precede with a psychological acceptance for Balkanization, that the people should agree that, okay, we cannot live any longer with each other. We are different. We're not Syrian people. I'm a Druze, you're a Kurd, I'm a Sunni, you're a Shia, I'm an Alawite, and everyone creates its own canton. And this is where the country is headed. So best case scenario, you see a centralized government in Damascus, a weak one, and then you have Kurdish, Druze, and Alawites having their decentralized regions. Or this goes further if these massacres continue, because it is happening in different ways. Like, it's not only about killing people. You have hundreds of thousands of Syrians kicked out of the public sector because they're privatizing the Syrian economy. And this means hundreds of thousands lost their jobs and they have no job opportunities. And now this political persecution and the killings happening. So people are on the edge. So I think that the worst case is going to be divided, and then in the coastal cities, Russia will take over in cooperation with Israel. Both agree that Turkey should stay out of the Mediterranean or the eastern bank of the Mediterranean, and the Russians are securing their interests there as well in cooperation with the US and with Israel.
Oh man, there's so much to focus in on, and let's see how far we can get. The first thing I wanted to focus on, and I myself, as a cultural and social psychologist, in relation to geopolitical events, always find this very, very important and so incredibly enraging, is that again you see that the West comes somewhere, the West intervenes and manages to divide human beings up along all these sectarian and ethnic lines. They just so love a world where we all bloody hate each other. It's so incredibly frustrating. I mean, all these groups in Syria, all these groups in West Asia in general that were just so, how can you say that? So good at living together, in living in a plural society where people are neighbors, maybe even intermarry sometimes of different groups, and nobody found it a big deal. You go together to school, everything, you're friends. And of course, the Western imperialists come there and make everybody hate each other, cut up the whole society into ethnic groups. The whole idea of nation state was created by the West to tie people's ethnicity, people's almost people's biology to a piece of land. It's
Yes.
such a messed up idea, and I think that I'm so incredibly enraged and disappointing and hurt that another beautiful country in West Asia is falling to that terrible system of Western imperialism. And my question in that regard is also, why do you think it is so easy? Why do you think the West is so successful in dividing people up? You told me yourself that, like, in the beginning, or when you grew up, you had a very plural society. You guys often did not even ask what is their religion or their background. And suddenly you're in a society where everybody is attacking each other, and people are fleeing, Christians are fleeing, and all that kind of stuff. And my question is, what do you think, why the West is so successful in this, and why are we not able, as anti-imperialist people, whether we're in West Asia or anywhere else, like ourselves, you're in Europe, I'm in Asia, why is it so difficult to buffer ourselves against that? And especially in your country, Syria, I would like to know, what do you think? Why is the West so successful in destroying psychologically that harmony that people had before?
That's a very good question. And to be honest with you, we have to go back a little bit in history. Syria, as a nation state, it never existed until the independence in the 40s. So before that, you had 400 years of Ottoman occupation or Ottoman control, and then you have the French, and each side basically supported different factions, and they always turned one group against each other. Under the Ottoman Empire, the Alawites went to the mountains, the Maronite went to the mountains because of fearing this persecution. And then the French come, they turn the Druze and the Alawites against the Sunnis, and then they put them in the army. Look, it's a construct of a long time of divide and conquest. And each of the empires who pass through this region, they try to divide the people and turn them against each other so they can control. But the West is particularly successful because the West is the empire. And the West has the means to impose its will and wishes. And they have the money, they have the press, the media, and they have the guns. So imagine the CIA alone had the budget of $1 billion per year to give to the so-called rebels, right? So the Syrian army, as a state institution, they didn't have the $1 billion per year to buy equipment. And those are being sent to unorganized, chaotic, barbaric groups. So what can you imagine if you dump all this money, including money come from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, into the hands of this type of people? Like every country, people really need to understand. Like in the United States, in Germany, in France, you have 3% psychopaths. In every country, you have some level of psychopathic people. And if there is a country A giving all this support, media support, logistic support, intelligence support, and military support to this 3% of the psychopaths, they could wreck the entire country. And then you incentivize you give the incentives for the people to join such groups. You make it like it's a holy war. And then you need the religious support. So here comes the role of countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia with their, I would say, mercenary religious figures. And every Friday they could say whatever the leadership wants them to say, right? If it's if they say this is a holy war against an infidel regime in Syria, then you have thousands of people around the world are motivated to go to Syria. So I blame the West for what happened in Syria because this is their regime change project. And I mean, they have been talking about it for a long time. Israel has been talking about it for a long time. But also the regional countries, they have come to the realization, it seems, in the past decades. And this is something that I'm receiving, like I received calls from the UAE, contacts with very good political ties in the UAE, telling me, in short, Like, the US is the dominant power, and you guys have chosen to face this dominant power without having basically the might to succeed. And you don't have a superpower in your back. It's not the Soviet Union like in the past, which is supporting anti-US forces. This is Russia. Russia has very good relationship with Israel, and now they are reconciling with the US. So you put yourself in a very vulnerable situation. Now, I'm not saying Syria took the wrong decision, but Syria definitely didn't immunize itself first against the ideas that were being, day and night, they're talking about it on Al Jazeera, for example. Massacres are happening in Latakia. We're watching the videos. Like, it's not like we found somewhere. It's these militants posting the videos themselves, killing entire families. Then you turn on Al Jazeera and they say they are coming after Assad regime remnants, right? So you have the public perception is being constructed by very influential channels with great ties with the US.
You could, sorry for interrupting, Kevork. So you could almost say it's the same idea as what is happening in Israel Palestine, where the media is saying they're chasing Hamas.
Like in Yemen, for example, the other day when we read the signal messages, and this is something I wrote yesterday. I just want to quote myself because I don't want to miss the point. I said, if the US can detect someone on the hit list in Yemen and can follow him going to his elite girlfriend's home, why doesn't the US bomb him on his way? Why do they drop a bomb on the entire residential building? Am I asking the wrong question? Now, somebody said, yes, this is the wrong question. Well, the US doesn't have the right to bomb Yemen to begin with, and I totally agree with that. That wasn't my point. But since you mentioned that we are living the darkest time in history, and especially with this vileness coming from the West, I would argue and say if the US is going to commit a crime, then at least you can limit the collateral damage of the civilian casualties. But this shows the complete recklessness and carelessness about you're going to kill one person and then you drop 1 ton of explosives over a building, which means you are minimum killing 50 people to kill one person. And this is not only a human decision. You may well know that in Gaza, when they weaponize the AI to kill alleged Hamas operatives, every junior Hamas operative or anyone linked or affiliated to, which we don't know what's the definition to affiliated to, right? Hamas. You could be the cousin of someone who is a junior, probably member of the political bureau of Hamas. You could get killed by Lavender and they could pick you. And in order to kill you, they are allowed to kill 10 civilians in the discourse of killing one person. If you're a senior, they're allowed to kill 100 people in the discourse of killing one senior Hamas member. This is horrendous. Like, there is no time that this was public. Like in Iraq, definitely they did. In Libya, definitely they did. But it wasn't as public as it is nowadays, and it is not as honest. Like, it's not like this Palantir or these AI systems are secret. They are in public. We're reading about it. They are publishing about it and saying this software can kill 100 people. So they can drop a bomb over a tent and kill 50, 100 civilians if they suspect there is a Hamas member. And this gives you a glimpse about how do they see us in the region. Like, what is a human life?
I was just gonna say, Kevork, I was just gonna say that this is also something that is all pretty much only possible in people in West Asia, and not just Arabs. Just most people are all over West Asia. They don't really care if it's Arabs or not, but in the mind, of course, of the Westerners, it's often Muslims and Arabs and that kind of stuff. But I don't think there has been any group of people besides the people in West Asia who have been completely disconnected from any moral concern. I mean, what we have seen happening during Israel's attack on Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Palestine, and the total, total disregard for human life, dropping bombs on residential areas. We're talking about nascent to nuclear bombs. I mean, these I've seen videos of bombs that were so extreme, and these were just dropped on residential areas. But we're also talking about open rape and sexual violence on camera, um, sniping of children, terrorist attacks by governments, and I'm just baffled, but I also realized this is the culmination of many years of cultural programming to not see people in that region as human beings. I mean, for the decades that I grew up in my society, and it's next to your country where you live now, Germany, I come from the Netherlands, the normalcy of just dehumanization of people in West Asia, the culmination of that is what we see today. And that will be, I think, also a bridge for the future. It starts with people in West Asia. It starts with the Syrians, the Iraqis, the Lebanese, the Palestinians. It starts with that. That's when it normalizes in people's minds, and then it will transfer to everybody who is an enemy. And before you know, the dark ages that we live in now are even darker than they are now.